See two idiot NRIs from Canada.
We'll keep that one. like the No, not that.
Thanks everyone. Like, subscribe, what do people say? Comment. Hi, I'm Pri.
And I'm Nitz.
And we're two Idiot NRIs. Today we're reacting on a video about India's military and armed forces. It's called India's Modern Military, and it's by the Armchair Historian.
Cool.
Yep.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers, yes. What is it again?
These are blueberry mojitos, non-alcoholic.
Yes.
Delicious.
Okay.
Over 1.4 billion people call the Republic of India home. The world's most populous country is a melting pot of languages, religions, and cultures. Its landscapes stretch from arid desert to steaming jungle, from soaring temples to red brick forts. This unprecedented variety of people and places makes India the powerhouse it is today. But as history shows, people and places are hardly enduring. They need to be fought for. Modern India is a nation forged in conflict. After over a century of British rule, the Indian subcontinent was controversially partitioned, leading to the Indo-Pakistani War of 1947 to 1948. The early Indian military, still largely led by British officers, seized the majority of the disputed region of Kashmir in the mountainous north, and would consolidate its control over other areas in the subsequent years, though not without leaving India with a flurry of border disputes that reverberate into the present. Despite its precarious security situation, the Indian military was initially an underfunded force that relied on a strategy of defense in depth. Unfortunately, this doctrine restricted the ability of the armed forces to respond to limited incursions, such as the case in India's 1962 conflict with China. Renewed conflict with Pakistan provided India an opportunity to refine its military doctrine, leading to a gradual mechanization of the army and a focus on overwhelming offensives. The modern geopolitical and strategic situation of India exists in the shadow of its early conflicts. Namely, the country possesses numerous contested borders with neighboring China and Pakistan. As a result of Pakistan's close relationship with China, India has long pursued a counterbalancing relationship with Russia. However, as the war in Ukraine calls Russia's reliability into question, India has begun to pursue closer defense relationships with Western countries like the United States and France. The Indian military's strategic doctrine closely reflects its geopolitical situation. Overwhelmingly geared toward countering the threats posed by Pakistan and China, the Indian military is heavily concentrated in the country's north and west. While the Indian military has historically been organized to deliver devastating offensives deep into the territory of its rivals, this blunt strategy has proved too rigid to respond to the asymmetric warfare of the 21st century. As a response to this changing landscape, India has adopted what it calls a cold start doctrine. Under this new strategy, the Indian military has been reorganized into smaller, more flexible battle groups that aim to mobilize quickly and deliver swift conventional strikes against Pakistan in particular. In the event of war, India hopes to use its new combat forces to seize limited chunks of Pakistani territory before the international community can intervene. This conquered territory could then be used as a bargaining chip in subsequent negotiations. The Indian armed forces are organized into three primary service branches: the Army, Air Force, and Navy. Exemplifying the country's focus on land-based territorial defense, the Indian Army is by far the largest branch of the armed forces. with over 1.2 million active personnel, more than a million greater than the Air Force and Navy combined, and the largest land force in the world. Securing and safeguarding its vast borders against formidable neighbors like China and Pakistan is a top priority for India's modern military. In the same way, protecting your online activities from malicious. Doctrinally, the Indian Army has always been fixated on the possibility of a two-front war against China and Pakistan. The rough terrain of the Chinese-Indian border and the technological superiority of the Chinese military make a ground conflict with India's northern neighbor exceptionally unappealing. For this reason, the Army's 2018 land warfare doctrine prioritizes de-escalation and deterrence with China, while advocating for a more provocative approach to Pakistan. To enable rapid advances against its enemies, the Indian Army has steadily focused on mechanizing its massive force, a priority reflected in its organization. Indian Army units are divided into two types of formations: Strike Corps and Holding Corps. Strike Corps prioritize mechanized warfare and feature a greater portion of India's tank force of over 3,700 vehicles. Holding Corps, on the other hand, are more static contingents, well-suited to defense. In the event of a war, these Holding Corps would be expected to pin down opposing forces, while the more maneuverable Strike Corps roll deep into enemy territory. In recent years, the equipment of the Indian Army has undergone significant modernization and increased reliance on domestic manufacturing, but still remains behind many other world powers in these respects. Many armored vehicles used by the Indian Army, like the T-72, T-90, or BMP-2, are Russian or Soviet in origin, though a large portion of these are manufactured locally in India. Recently, the Indian Army has begun incorporating a greater variety of Indian equipment, such as the Arjun tank, into their arsenal. This is a trend that the Indian government is hoping to encourage. While the Indian Army has geared up for an armored conflict, much of the branch's recent experience has been low-grade counterinsurgency fighting in the disputed region of Kashmir. To fight this conflict, the Indian Army relies on a light infantry force known as the Rashtriya Rifles, which is a designated counterinsurgency group focused on internal security. While smaller in scope, this guerrilla war has been costly. Since 1989, the Indian Army has suffered more casualties combating insurgents than it has in any of its high-intensity military conflicts. Despite its current commitment to counterinsurgency, India has the capacity to massively escalate any conflict with its stockpile of approximately 150 to 200 nuclear weapons. Possessing the ability to deploy nuclear devices from land, sea, or air-based platforms, India is the only country outside of the UN Security Council confirmed to possess a nuclear triad. Though India has committed to not be the first member of a conflict to use nuclear weapons, India's nuclear-armed rival, Pakistan, has not agreed to any such limitation. This volatile combination has deeply influenced the strategy of the Indian military, as evidenced by the limited offensives favored in India's Cold Start doctrine. The Indian military is skewed heavily toward land warfare, but that is not to say that it lacks assets elsewhere. In fact, the Indian Air Force is the fourth largest in the entire world, with 730 combat-capable aircraft. Historically, concentrated primarily against Pakistan, the Indian Air Force has undergone significant doctrinal shifts in recent years, as India seeks to transition the service from an army support role to an independent tool of power projection. Complicating the expanded mission of the Indian Air Force is its eclectic and sometimes outdated collection of airframes. Attempts to produce modern Indian-designed combat aircraft have met with much delay and spiraling costs. As a result, the majority of the Air Force's fleet consists of Russian aircraft such as the Su-30 and MiG-29. The Indian Air Force has also procured a number of aircraft from France, most notably the advanced Dassault Rafale. Despite its wide variety of aircraft in service, the Indian Air Force remains significantly under strength, with only 31 squadrons operational out of a target of 42. Smaller still is the Indian Navy. Decades of preparation for land-based conflicts with Pakistan, as well as the heavy fixation on the mountainous northern border, have left the Navy relatively neglected. However, with China making increasingly aggressive moves into the Indian Ocean, India has begun to restructure its navy into a force capable of countering its rival. India's most potent maritime assets are its 2 aircraft carriers, which can carry a combined total of 60 aircraft. In the future, India envisions its navy possessing 3 carrier battle groups, but the acquisition and construction of these vessels has been marred by delays and cost overruns. Some in the Indian Navy have even suggested abandoning plans for carriers altogether and redirecting funding to smaller drone ships and hypersonic missiles. While the Indian Navy does face significant challenges, it is still a powerful force that is only growing in confidence. In addition to its costly carriers, the Indian Navy fields 27 large surface warships and 18 submarines, including 2 nuclear-powered strategic submarines. Complementing this formidable fleet are 160 coastal and patrol craft, some of which can be armed with small missiles. Nevertheless, India's fleet remains significantly smaller and less capable than China's, a fact that India has sought to rectify through renewed shipbuilding efforts and military cooperation with the United States. The coming years will likely see significant modernization to the equipment of the entire Indian military. Ideally, much of this new equipment will come from Indian defense firms, decreasing the country's current reliance on foreign suppliers such as Russia. It remains to be seen if Indian industry is up to this daunting task, but the rapid rise of Indian economic power gives reason for some optimism. As India attempts to increase its power projection capabilities, upgrades to the Air Force and Navy will be especially crucial. In terms of doctrine, India will have to navigate the fraught possibility of fighting a conventional war with its nuclear-armed rivals of Pakistan and China. As China continues to flex its muscles in the Indian Ocean, it will be especially critical for India to find effective strategies to contain this growing threat. Harboring complementary goals, Western nations, such as the United States, will likely seek to collaborate more closely with the rising power of India. Since its independence over 75 years ago, the Indian armed forces have accomplished much. They have successfully defended the country in a number of conflicts, served countless humanitarian roles, and have never threatened the political process of the world's largest democracy. That's a legacy worth fighting for. Check out Armchair History TV.
All right, so that was pretty interesting. I don't know why they made the prime minister there look like Rahul Gandhi.
अब इमोशनल बात कहना चाहता हूं, दिल की बात कहना चाहता हूं। This morning I got up at night.
Rahul Gandhi?
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
not the prime minister of India, but
No, or like the lecturer, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't
like
know
he
what-
was explaining things. He looked like Rahul Gandhi. Yeah.
but that portrait in his background was Draupadi Murmu, right?
Oh,
Was it?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Anyways, but yeah, interesting
sure.
video.
Yeah.
I think it was fairly accurate. Like what the situation is, pretty realistic.
Yeah.
So yeah, China is quite ahead of India, but right now they're a 5 times larger economy, so it kind of makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ratios are like India is 10 times Pakistan, and then China is 5 times India. So like that's
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what the spread is in that region.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only comment that, I had as I was listening to it was there's been a lot of push during the last 10 years, right? To have like a strong like defense to make in India and things like that, to develop infrastructure close to the border, especially in the Northeast. I feel like if things like that were done earlier in like previous governments, you know, after independence, then we would be closer to where China is. So anyways, I feel like, you know, if we had started earlier, then we would be closer to where China is. But, you know, I guess better late than never. I'm really glad that the current government takes this really seriously. And it's going to become, you know, more and more serious, right? Like as China tries to sort of control like the Pacific South, you know, that's a big issue for India. And then, as the video said, Pakistan has been an issue, but I think now it's more like China being confident that you can defend if there's any, you know, attack or anything like
exactly.
that.
You don't need to be able to defeat all of China. You just need to make it so painful that they would never attack you.
Right.
And that's kind of what India's strategy is right now.
Yeah.
I
guess the other thing is that you can even see, even us, right? Like from the West here, like we can see the difference between previous governments and the current government. I mean, like, don't you remember and this is more on the Pakistan side, because in previous years, Pakistan was a big issue, right? For India, like there were terrorist attacks all the time. That's all we heard. Like, you know, the Parliament attack, Red Fort attack, Akshardham, Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 attacks, like so many attacks under the previous government and no response from that government, right? Like our armed forces were ready to respond and like the Congress and that government was like, no, like we'll take it lying down, I guess. Whereas now, the BJP government, when Pathankot attack happened, and then I think Pulwama attack happened in 2019, the Indian Air Force went in, right? Like they went into the illegally occupied like portion of Kashmir that Pakistan controls, and they bombed the Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist camp.
Was that the Balakot strike?
Yeah, the Balakot strike. Yeah, so those were the airstrike. That was the Air Force that did that. So, you know, it was like, you do this, we're going to strike. And then the Uri attack that happened, again, I think that was Jaish-e-Mohammed again. Like, they have so many jihadi groups there. Unfortunately, that's why they're in the condition that they're in. But like 11 days later, India crossed the line of control and carried out the surgical strikes, right? Which the movie Uri was based off of, which was a great film that we saw. So I feel like now this is like a new India. And at least on the Pakistan side, like India, as the video said, if anything happens, like we're going to strike back.
I say to the whole world, India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism.
It's a very strong, stern sort of, you know, response. And we haven't seen that many attacks since then. And like, not just, I know like this was about the defense, but I think it's important to note that India has used a lot in its power to ensure that those terrorist attacks, that infiltration doesn't happen, including, you know, securing the border, but also ensuring that economically Pakistan is isolated, right? Like they demonetized large currency, so that stopped terror financing. I think that was like the first term of the Modi government. they provided proof that Pakistan does terror financing, and so they were in the FATF list several times, which like basically bankrupt the country even more.
Yeah.
And then I think through masterful like diplomacy, they've and negotiations, they've sort of ensured that Pakistan is isolated, even from their own former allies, like the Gulf countries no longer fund them as much anymore. Like Saudi Arabia has said, we're not going to fund you, and like UAE and stuff like that.
Yeah, so clearly it's not about religion. It's about one country is trying to get terrorists across your border for its entire history. Yeah. And India gets along well with everyone who doesn't.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And, it's a decision, right? That was Pakistan's, almost their foreign policy. I think after fighting 4 wars with India, was it 4?
They started 4 and lost 4.
And lost 4. They knew they couldn't win in like a traditional war. So then they started this like sort of policy of sending terrorists.
Yeah, so it's called the 1,000 paper cuts strategy.
Yeah.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
So basically, if you do small terrorist attacks, it's not enough to provoke a full military response because you would lose a war with India, obviously. So it's just about calling that bluff, being like, oh, these people were funded by ISI or they had information shared by them. So we're actually going to come in and strike you wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think terrorism has fallen quite a bit since.
Like 1 or 2 incidents maybe in the last 10 years of the BJP government, but not a lot at all. It used to be all the time. Like every year there were several, and it wasn't just one terrorist attack. It was like a few, right? Like in different places the same time. Yeah. But
so like the video said, it actually took more Indian personnel lives than all of the hot wars combined.
Right.
So this was working. It was a more effective war against India than trying to fight and lose because you're much behind India.
Yes.
So just calling that bluff cut down a lot of that.
And now it's like a deterrence, right? So India did Balakot, they did the surgical strike, and it's that is a deterrence to say we're not going to take it lying down anymore, right? So,
exactly. Just call the bluff every time.
Yeah.
And I can't believe after the Taj Hotel attack, they just sat there and were like, let's not respond.
I know. I mean,
you're so much larger. You're so much more powerful.
It should have been a full-on attack, I think. All the lives that were lost, for the government and the military or the armed forces were ready. They said,
of course,
it all came out, right, after the fact. They were ready. And this one was, I think, was it Manmohan government?
Yeah,
which was he was a puppet of Sonia Gandhi.
Yeah.
But to not avenge the lives that were lost. And I think some of our armed forces, I don't know exactly which, but they went in and fought the terrorists, right? And some of them died as well that day. So to not avenge the innocent people that died plus our armed forces.
Yeah, crazy.
Unbelievable. And then you just allow basically what you're saying is this is normal. It was normal during UPA government. Terrorist attacks, they just happen. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's inviting more attacks. So at least we deterred it now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of leads to the cold start doctrine. I think this is not an official doctrine. I'm not sure. But I think it's kind of more shadowy, it's spoken of, but it's not the official policy. So basically, Pakistan, after they develop nukes, every time you threaten to respond to them, they start shaking their nukes around,
Yeah.
They move them to the front lines, they do everything to provoke it to that level. So that prevents a lot of major wars. So you can't, they hope to escalate so much that you don't want to attack Pakistan for fear of them launching a nuke, which would be much more devastating than any attack. So that's where the cold start doctrine is. So that, like they said, is split into 2, where you strike so hard, so fast into Pakistan, you take large parts of their land. So then you're sitting on their land and they can't really if they launch a nuclear strike, you're already in their land, so like they don't want to escalate again after that. And then the second part is the holding core, so they can't do the same into India. So basically, it's like you'd go so far, so deep into Pakistan that they can't launch a nuclear strike. So it's kind of a call on that as well.
Now I heard, and I'm not sure where, but I heard that we do have that, like, what was that called, the agreement?
No first use.
No first use, but it's like, if something happened from the other side, like, we're gonna demolish you.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
our
the
response will be devastating. Like, it won't be proportional.
Yeah.
It would be disproportionate and devastating.
Right. And that's what it should be. Like, don't use it first, but then if someone does, like, if someone launched a nuke into India, just launch all of them. Like,
And, like, think about it. Like, who's worried? Like, the world isn't, other than, like, Pakistan and maybe China, the world isn't worried that India has nukes, really. No. Because India's a responsible country. They're a democratic country. They're not going to just...
India's been more responsible with nukes than a lot of NPT members.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of the proliferation that's happened in, like, North Korea, Pakistan, and then Pakistan to maybe some other countries. I can't remember which, but, like, like, India, even not being part of the NPT, has been much more responsible than some countries in the NPT.
Anything else you have on the video?
No, so that's just the Pakistan side. We can maybe talk about the China side as well. So I think we really should do a video on, like, all of the branches of the Indian military.
I wanted to do that. If you guys have any good suggestions, let us know in the comments. But we'll try to find a good video about that, because I really wanted to do that too. I want to learn more about, like, all the different, like what's it called? Even, like, the special forces and things like that. I want to know
like
more
the BSF
about.
and everything. So moving on to China. So it did mention they have a much bigger navy. I don't think the Navy situation is as bad as, like, the Air Force situation. We can talk about both. So China is mostly focused on the other side of their population. So, like, the vast majority of China's population is towards Taiwan, and that's where the conflict with the United States is going on, where China wants to take over Taiwan and the rest of the world doesn't want them to take over Taiwan. So they're mostly focused on that side. As far as India's Navy, what they have to do is just stop the line at the Malacca Strait. So if they stop anything from getting through, they're kind of safe there. And it has a lot of good geography helping it out. So the Bay of Bengal is really deep. So, like, India can put its nuclear submarines there. Nothing can find them, and they can launch a nuke at any time. So the Navy situation is not quite as bad as you said.
I guess the other thing with China too is, like, India has fought wars recently, right? Like, I know, like, we fought a war with China, so they fought that war, and China won that war. But we've also fought for wars with Pakistan as well. So, like, I feel like, India has fought wars and it has learned lessons from those wars. Whereas, China hasn't really had any, like, full-on wars other than, like, between India and China. So.
So it's because of Pakistan, I guess, that India has the best mountain corps in the world.
So
that's widely acknowledged, actually. Like, there's few countries that have even close to as much mountain experience as India does. But it's true. So China's army is untested. We don't know what would happen if like, things hit the wall. And then I don't know if this video is, like, real or not, but it's like, our armed forces, they go into the military because obviously love of the country, and they want to defend the country and its country, the people. But there was this video of, like Chinese, like, army, and, like, because they had the one China policy, like, they had, like, just one, like, usually, like, boy, right? And if it's a boy, then they used to, like, basically worship the child. And so you have all these, like, spoiled kids going into the army, and, like, there was this video of, like, a bus of, like, Chinese army people, and, like, they're crying because they didn't want to, like, go and, like, serve or something. It was just, I don't know if it's real or not. Did you see that? I don't know. Like, does China doesn't have a draft, do they?
I don't No, but
So
it was
then why
like,
would they be crying if
I don't
they
know. I feel
volunteered?
like maybe there was
Yeah.
some escalation or something, so they thought something might actually
maybe, yeah.
happen
Yeah.
because they haven't really fought a full-on war in a long time. So, like, so
It's
I don't know.
possible.
Anyways,
Yeah.
you can delete that if you want, but like I don't know if it was a real like
Yeah.
video or not, but it was funny. Like a lot of people were like trolling and making
Yeah.
fun of it.
But like in the end, they just don't have any hot conflict experience
Yeah,
recently.
yeah.
So normally there's just a lot of bullying much smaller countries than India.
Mm-hmm.
So like Philippines, Indonesia, like have you
I mean,
seen what
every
have you
country,
seen what
they
they've
have
done?
claim on
have
every
you seen what they've
country.
done? So like with their like when there's like a fishing boat somewhere they don't want, they have like the giant water cannons and
Oh
they blast them
gosh,
at,
yeah,
like fishermen
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, so it's just bullying like much smaller countries.
And they basically claim land of like every country,
Yeah.
right?
Everyone
Like,
they touch except Pakistan, and Pakistan gave up parts of Kashmir to make that not happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like Russia, they have
Russia,
border
Japan,
disputes.
India,
Taiwan, obviously, Philippines,
Philippines,
as you said.
Indonesia, maybe.
Yeah, like everything in the
Everyone they touch
Yeah.
except for Pakistan.
and
Yeah.
not touch. Like everyone they touch and not touch. Like it's just like everyone
Yeah.
in like the Pacific
Yeah.
South area. Yeah.
And Taiwan is also like that bottlenecking place on the other side that like if they got past that they could go anywhere.
Right.
But like if they don't have Taiwan, you can sort of contain them. So like that's also why Taiwan's important.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it was a really good video. Do you have anything else to add?
I mean, I guess I don't know what the other previous governments were doing with like China was building roads on that front
Yes.
for so long. They
Yeah.
have so much more development, and we only started like now.
Yeah, during
Like,
the
in the
Modi
last couple of
government.
years, yeah.
So actually, there's a statement of like Nehru, the former prime minister, I think, that was like, oh, if we build infrastructure in the northeast close to the Chinese border or like the India-China border, then it will allow the Chinese to come into India. Like
Yeah.
the logic made no sense, but like.
I mean, you can just stop that. Like,
Yeah.
there's like demolishable roads and like stuff you can
But
do.
not but
Yeah.
you also need infrastructure on your
To get
side
there, yeah.
so you can get there
Yeah.
and defend, right?
And then if you
So-
build a base on the other side, like you're
Yeah.
defending that much better.
Right, yeah. So it's only in the last 10 years that we've seen huge push and investment in infrastructure in the Northeast and development of that area. It was
Yeah.
very underdeveloped. And so so that's another, great thing that's happening in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also like just everything. Like we've talked about this in previous videos. So check out all our videos. But like Tejas as well. So that was envisioned maybe in 1990s or something. So for maybe before that even. But the project basically dragged on, and like no one was seriously funding it. So it's only come out pretty recently, like it
Right,
first flew
in the
a while
last-
ago.
yeah, that's
There's about 40 units developed, delivered so far.
And like the more like it takes practice.
start.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to start somewhere, and like encourage your own like industries and private companies and things like that to start developing, right? Like
yeah.
these aircrafts and weapons and things like that.
Just like China did. So
yeah,
their
yeah.
first fighter wasn't a 5th gen stealth fighter. It was just a fighter.
Right,
And then you keep
yeah.
going and going and going.
Right.
And also Tejas isn't meant to do that. It's meant to be cheap. And you can, like you said, we're at 31 squadrons right now. So the 42 squadron strength
Yeah.
was something like a number someone came up with a while ago. So even that might not be what they need
It
right
might
now.
be even higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially where China has more advanced fighters than you. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just a lot of like believing in yourself and your own industry that's coming
Right.
up now.
Yeah.
So now there's so many defense startups and everything, new space research, Newport Aerospace,
Okay, right.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's so many startups going now,
Right.
and involving private companies in production of the fighters and things like that.
And like young people
yeah.
and
Yeah.
students and stuff, encouraging them too, right?
Yeah.
They're the future. So yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and also like don't just have a private monopoly, which is like the worst
Right.
of all worlds.
Yes, yeah.
So now they're involving like Tata and like all these other companies that are good at building things,
Right.
and staying on schedule because they're.
That's what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
They have to, right?
Yeah.
Like private companies have to.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. No, we really like that video. It gave like a good overview of the, of the issues India faces and how they've progressed in this sector in the last, especially 10 years. But we will try to do more videos on, the different sort of, what's it called, like
branches
the
of the
branches
military,
of like the armed forces, the special forces, the
Yeah.
elite forces. I really want to do one on that. Yeah.
So what happens first, us doing the branches of the military video, or them creating theaters so we don't have to anymore?
Yeah.
A combined theater command, I think.
Yeah.
So Modi said 2 years into this election, I think, and this election was when?
The
the
current
last
one, it was in June 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might get that video out.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Be sure to like and subscribe. We're trying to do a lot more content like this and just getting started. So
Right.
yeah, join
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And your timer starts now.
Is that the max? Shit, you're holding it on me.
I didn't realize. No.